So what tools do we have? Well, the tools we have, as I said, are a suite of tools called energy psychology techniques. And started developing about 20 years ago after the arrival of kinesiology and the work of Goodhart and people like that. And what started to happen was people started combining cognitive psychology with techniques like NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, and working with new understandings about neuroscience and the energetic biofield, and also combining those with light touch interventions such as EFT or TAT. But there's a whole new suite of energy psychology techniques coming out now that don't actually need that light touch. They seem to be just going straight in using intention into the cognitive processes and getting astonishing results. Amit Goswami, the quantum physicist that I mentioned earlier, he has described energy psychology techniques as the biggest technology of the 21st century, because for him it's just plugging straight into quantum mechanics, the quantum field of information, because that's what we're working with. The kind of tools that we have and how we use them, we can actually do energy balancing exercises with the body, doing energy exercises such as Donna Eden's energy medicine exercises. We can use it as a diagnostic tool with kinesiology and muscle testing. And then there are a whole group of interventions that have grown from the original thought field therapy technique, which is also known as energy tapping by some people. It now comes under names like EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapas acupressure technique, and then the neuro ones like the Z-point process, emotrance, non-personal awareness. Great techniques. If you get a chance to try any of these, I highly recommend them. Each of them works differently. Everybody finds what works best for them. But I've seen some amazing, amazing transformations taking place by people employing these tools. So finally, how does this all relate to CRV? Well, here's the problem. We have the source of the question. Okay, we've no control over the question. We've no control over who's going to walk in the door, who's going to bring in a tasking, who's going to bring in a question or a project to work on. And then we have the source of the answer. But again, we don't know where it is. We don't know what it is. We don't know. We just know that there's some way of getting the information. And in between the two of these, we have the remote viewer. The remote viewer is the conduit. They are the stream through which the information passes. And this is the viewer is the only point where we can control the quality of the information reporting. We have no control over the other two sides. Only the viewer, and the viewer's self-control is what determines the quality of the information that's coming through. So we need to look at what can affect the reviewer. Well, in any CRV or psychic process, there are three distinct phases or stages. We have the pre-session work, the preparation, the rituals, whatever you use to get to the start point. Then we have the time when you're in session. And then we have what happens after the session, which can be just as important in some cases. The big thing that hits people before they even start is the belief. I could never do this. I'm not psychic. It's evil. It's wrong for me to do this. I will never be as good a viewer as Ingo. I can only remote view if I have my special desk at home in my special room on the special time that I've set aside. I can only remote view if it's sidereal time. There's another one. If I remote view bad projects or scary projects, it will affect me emotionally. I can't view police targets. I can't view murder targets. And I can't do this for money. Very common beliefs that stop somebody before they even get to the starting point. So the pre-session work is very much identified by anxiety. It's anticipation, anxiety, and stress. And the terminology that we use, like PI for personal inclemencies, set-asides, POCAs, POCDs, fear of failure, When you look at what's behind all of those, it's always an anticipatory anxiety or stress. It's an emotional response to something that you perceive is about to happen. So the solution is we can use these techniques to cool down, to quickly balance the energy field and balance the psychological disposition of the viewer, eliminate the emotional filter that's getting in the way. And like I said, TAT is a great technique for doing that. We can start by establishing internal agreement. Again, we can set up that dialogue between the conscious and subconscious minds to make sure everybody's on the same page before we even start the session. And then we can deal directly with specific fears of failure, anxiety, or excitement, as in the case of a POCA, previews of coming attractors. We can use the techniques to release the emotional energy attached to the viewer's thoughts. When you're in session, the things that impede the process are generally characterized by excitement and frustration. So we have EA, we have emotional attractors, things at the target that attract us, things that are sparkly, shiny, that draw our attention and draw us away from what we should be working on. Or emotional distractors, physical sensations that start to come up in the body, that are starting to create anxiety, that cause us to become distracted from the target for one reason or another. Because here's the thing, every piece of information that you receive, remember the thing about the Heart Math Institute, that all information comes into the heart center and it's processed there and then for its emotional effect on you. Okay, and it's perceived as either love, not love, safe, not safe. But we also know then that memories are grouped by emotional effect. So that if a memory or a thought is triggered, it can lead to a cascade of memories. This is where stray cats start kicking in, different forms of stray cats. The famous squirrel, stray cats wrecking everything, running loose. What you have there is just a lot of memory, a lot of emotions, all just spilling around and causing the conscious mind to be distracted and to go offline. So again, the terminologies we use like AOL for analytical overlay or stray cats. And remember the terminology stray cat, subconscious transfer of recollections, anxieties and yearnings, memories, fears and desires, in other words, into consciously accessible thought, into the conscious mind. So even in stray cat there we're acknowledging the fact that it's memories, fears and desires that are getting in the way and causing the viewer to become distracted or to go off in another direction at the target. So, and the squirrel then effectively is a form of memory overload. It's an emotional overload on the system. The other thing then, in session, we have to deal with emotions. And very specifically, that kicks in with the AI, with the aesthetic impact. The aesthetic impact, as we know, is the moment when we establish contact with the target. We establish an emotional and spatial relationship to the target. Because suddenly we're aware of it's there in front of me, it's over to my right, it's up above me, it's all around me. And as we said, every piece of information has an emotional effect. So the important component of the AI is that it's information and emotions. So I feel inspired, I feel terrified, I feel, they're all feelings and emotions. Sorry, they're all emotions, beg your pardon. But the question kicks in, what if the emotion is too overwhelming? Another thing that can kick in is target avoidance. I remember Lynn telling the story about the Bhopal gas disaster that happened in India many years ago, where an entire community was wiped out by a kind of a nerve agent gas. And when viewers were asked to view it, they always viewed it from a distance. Even though they were remote viewing, for some reason they kept looking at this event from quite a long distance away. So was that the subconscious trying to protect them from some kind of emotional overload? I don't know. But if you're given a tasking to go to a specific target and you can't get there, that's going to be a major problem as a professional remote viewer. And the other thing then you have to watch is that your personal life traumas can lead to you avoiding targets, because that's like what happened to me, but it also can cause you to get sucked into the target, because what you're viewing is that's just like my story, that's just like what happened to me too, and suddenly you start to empathize with the target location or somebody that's there, and next thing you know, you're getting sucked in. So in session, we can work with the frustration that kicks in, again, by detaching the emotion from the thought using an energetic technique like EFT or TAT, or one of the other energy psychology tools. We can also work with trauma and target avoidance by clearing the original trauma, clearing the original memory, or clearing, not the memory, clearing the emotion that's attached itself to the original memory, that's distorting our perception of what happened. That is causing us to think that at some time in the past, our safety was compromised, severely compromised. And then you can also use it with, when you go into AOL Drive, we use P5 tools as a way of kind of blowing out the pipes, as Lynn calls it. Now, for me, P5 tools are very cognitive tools. It's very much about up here. What I like about energy psychology techniques is that it goes in mind and body, but it goes straight into the hardwiring, goes into the energetic pattern that's causing the problem in the first place, and settles everything down very quickly. So, as I say here on the slide, don't shoot the squirrel, catch it, pat it, tag it, and let it go. Because every time you do this, there's some learning that's going to come back at you. So every time you clear a memory, every time you clear a trauma, there's a learning that's going to come back. As an aside, I'll tell you one quick story about a guy who was beaten by a teacher here as a young child. And every day he used to cycle past that teacher's house, or what he thought was the teacher, because for years he remembers cycling past this one house where this teacher lived, because he wanted to shame the teacher by letting him see him go past. And when we used EFT and we cleared the memory of what actually cleared the emotion on the memory of what happened, he suddenly declared, "Oh my God, that wasn't the guy that beat me. That was the teacher who stepped in to save me." And his memory had become completely distorted by the emotional filter that had parked itself right on top of that memory. So when you take the filter out, the memories become much clearer and much sharper. So there's a learning to be had, and it's sitting there waiting for you. Post-session, this is where we need to look at the whole question about getting sucked in. Now, I've had conversations with non-CRV viewers, or people who haven't taken training with Lynn, and they're absolutely adamant, "Oh, I can remove you anything." No, you won't be affected by targets. And pardon my expression, I'm going to use it, that's crap. Absolute BS. Because we know from the physics of what's happening that every single piece of information that you perceive is being tested for its emotional impact upon you. So how can you tell me that you can throw a target like that and not be affected emotionally? How can you tell me that you can't do a target like that and not be affected emotionally? Because the minute you start to empathize with anybody or anything in that target, you're going to be drawn in there. Because here's the problem with getting sucked into the target. The purpose of remote viewing, as Lynn always tells us, is to learn something about myself. It's not about naming the target, it's about learning something about myself in the process. So if I remote view a person, I will learn something about that person relative to my morals and values. But in doing so, I will also learn something about them. But if I'm having thoughts during a session where I can't decide which are my thoughts from the thoughts of someone or something at the target, in that moment, how do I know who I am if I can't tell the difference? From an energetic point of view, have our energetic personalities in some way become enmeshed, or as the term that quantum physicists love to use, have they become entangled? Well, in a way they have, because as we know, all particles are entangled. If you take two particles and split them and separate them, and you do something to one of them, the other one will automatically respond instantaneously. There's no loss of time. They're entangled. If you take the Big Bang, where that one particle divided itself, then if you take the principle of entanglement on and on and on, every particle that has subdivided itself is still linked back to the Big Bang. So every particle is entangled. So every piece of information affects us in some way or another. So if I entangle with another person's energetic personality, it will affect me. It has affected me. I've had the experience in the past of doing a target, and it took me about a year. It took me about 6 months to realize what had happened, and a year in total to clear what had actually happened, to get my fascination with the target out of my head. So the question is, how do I separate psychologically and energetically from them? Well, energy psychology tools are fantastic for detoxing, because again, you're going straight to the core of the problem. Now, I would still say go through the detox process as we're trained to do it. Go back to every thought, every piece of data that you perceived in your session. Decide, is it theirs, is it mine, is it theirs, is it mine? And take as long as it needs to separate yourself out that way. But in addition, I would also say, use the energy psychology techniques to emotionally and energetically separate yourself from the target. It's a simple process to do, but trust me, if it hasn't happened to you yet, I hope it doesn't. But getting entangled into a target is not nice.